皆さんこんにちは。KemushiChanチャンネルのロレッタです。Welcome to 2017. Yes, I know it is already February, and if you are anything like me, that means that by this point, you should have been studying, and instead, you have probably already given up on your New Year's resolutions. Yeah. But you know what? It is only February, which means I think there's still plenty of time to start this year off on the right foot. Which is why today I would like to share with you guys and confess a few more of my own personal detrimental study habits. Which is why today I'm going to present 7 Japanese study habits that I am finally ditching in 2017. These are some of the most common mistakes that I have been making and continuing to make over the past few years. So let's get started. The first most common mistake that I always make is failing to even get into the conversation, or in other words, being unprepared. You know, when you live in Japan, one of the most common complaints that you will hear from other people who live in Japan is Japanese people always speak English to me, or all I said was one word and they're always like, "Ojouzu desu ne." When the truth of the matter is, for a lot of people, when Japanese people do actually speak to you in real Japanese at real speeds, half of us don't even know what they're saying or how to respond anyways. The rest of the conversation is probably just going over your head. Conversations and basic human interaction is a lot more predictable than you think, and one of the ways to avoid freezing up and avoid not being ready for a conversation is to spend a few minutes in your morning while you're getting ready just rehearsing what you probably think you'll have to say. I keep getting caught off guard and I realize it's because I haven't been doing that recently. So my tip to you is to avoid freezing up, rehearse your Japanese out loud before you have to go out. Next, I am also guilty of cramming. I noticed that I tend to overuse one word in Japanese, isogashi, or busy. It's the same thing I used to do in English, and I just brought it over into Japanese. Oh, I'm so busy, chou isogashi, saikin isogashi. Like, what is with the humble bragging? I do it in English, I do it in Japanese. It's gotta stop. Those are just excuses. I've seen my everyday. I know what it is that I do every day, and the point is, I'm not just too busy to study. The problem is, I just don't prioritize it. You know what the real problem with cramming is? That you may actually pass whatever test that you cram for, or you may actually get through whatever it is that you kind of last minute got ready for, but in the long term, whatever it is that you shoved into your brain is probably just gonna bounce right off of it and be forgotten in about a month. Back when I was in high school, it was different. I had to study Japanese every day. I had to work with it every day just because I had classes every day. And that was a lot more beneficial. Those are the things I still remember even to this day. The things that I was constantly seeing every single day. So my advice to you is, yeah, cramming may help, but in the long run, if you really want to be able to speak a language and really build on it and really be able to use it in the future, do not cram. Study a little bit every day. The next thing I'm guilty of is buying too many things just because they're Japanese. I'm talking about apps, books, notebooks especially. These are just like 5 that I've gotten in the last 2 months already. This is just the beginning of the year and I've already got all these empty notebooks. I don't even like Star Wars. Yeah, I said it. The moment I see like a Japanese book, I'm like, oh, it's Japanese, so I should buy it. But I don't actually need it. I don't actually use it. You don't need all of that. The problem is you spend all this money on stuff and books that you think you need, but before you even bought them, were you studying to begin with? Buying all this stuff doesn't make you more fluent if you weren't trying to study to begin with. So before you try to figure out what you need to buy, figure out what it is you need to learn, and then see what you need to help that goal. I mean, seriously, sometimes I open my closet and I'm like, who are you? And how long have I had this book? But not anymore. First, work with what you have around you already, and then go from there. When I do study, one of the most common mistakes that I make is obsessing with almost every iteration of every kanji that I find in a book. It's this idea that I have to learn every single Japanese word that I encounter the moment I encounter it. But when it comes to getting started, obsessing over every little bit of Japanese that hits you is just going to exhaust you, and it's probably not going to stick. Okay, one of the most common words in Japanese, ski. If you look this up in the dictionary, you're going to find readings like this: ski, konomu, yoi, ko. And suddenly you're like, wait, hold on. I thought it was just one word. What is all this? Which ones am I supposed to learn? What am I supposed to do? Look at how many sentences there are. Like, look at this one. かなり多くのアメリカ人は寿司を好む。干物は私の好みに合わない。好き嫌い言わないで全部食べなさい。この劇は好評を得た。この映画は子供に好ましくない影響を与えるかもしれません。Even one of the most common, most simple kanji has so many different sounds and so many different sentences, and you really think you're supposed to memorize them all like that? For kanji, pick 1 or 2 readings, or for words, pick 1 or 2 example sentences to memorize along with the word, because honestly, you can always come back later, and it's better not to bog yourself down. Just looking at all those readings there, it's like, no wonder you don't study every day. Learning all this would take you all day. Ain't nobody got time for that. The next one is probably the one I'm the most guilty of. It is studying only online. Just like stop and listen for a second. If you are only like clicking and browsing and watching and listening, but you're never actually saying anything, chances are you are not learning Japanese. For me, usually, if I'm studying something online, I'm usually only taking in information, which is very passive, and that's not going to help you actually learn to speak Japanese. To do that, you have to actually practice, and that's something I need to get back into. Another big mistake is studying the wrong types of content. If you are an intermediate to advanced speaker, you probably know what I'm talking about, but I will pick up almost any book or magazine just because it's Japanese, but it may have nothing to do with the types of conversations or content that I would like to be able to actually speak or perform in or about. That was great English. Like for me, I want to learn more about coding and design and graphic design, but I don't own anything in Japanese that has anything to do with those topics, so I can't talk about it. Or for example, I want to get a job and be able to talk about business, but all I've bought so far is novels and nothing that has anything to do with that at all. People are not typically fluent in all parts of a language. They normally focus on the parts that they need for their daily lives. So for you, if that's a hobby, a career, or just something fun you like to talk about, start focusing on those specific topics so that you can actually start using them in the foreign language that you're trying to speak. The last one is probably the biggest one that will slow your progress in learning Japanese, and that is studying the wrong function of languages. I made a video in the past called Am I Fluent that talks about this, but basically, when you speak a language, you can speak, you can listen, you can write, you can read. And when you speak or when you write, you create language, and when you listen and when you read, you're just taking it in. Most people, when they study, they are very passive. They are reading things and they are listening to things, but they're not actually practicing producing the language. So if you want to speak, you need to practice speaking. You need an audio diary or a native speaker to work with. If you want to be able to write better, you need to practice writing. Keep a diary, start writing, find someone who can check you. To get better at a language, you don't need to study it, you need to practice it. And that's one of the things I most definitely need to improve this year. So those are my 7 biggest roadblocks when it comes to learning Japanese. Not rehearsing, cramming, buying things you don't need, obsessing over every single little bit of Japanese, studying too much online, studying the wrong content, and studying the wrong way. Don't do these things. Which one are you guilty of? Me? All of them. But we still have 10 more months this year to get a little bit better. At least that's what I keep telling myself. Alright guys, let's do this! では今日はこれで以上です。このトピックに対して質問か意見があればぜひコメント欄でまたは、Twitter で送ってください。今日もご視聴ありがとうございました。この動画が良かったらグッドボタンとシェアとチャンネル登録もぜひお願いします。I'll see you guys next time. Bye!